The chase is on. So Doctor Who has just wrapped up its 11th series of its rebooted time, and we get to see now how it's finally concluded after its 10 episode run. And it's been very interesting for me to go and watch this series as a newcomer and actually experience Doctor Who for the first time. And I think coming here now, I may not be the most qualified person to review a series of Doctor Who, but I'm going to do it anyway. So yes, you heard that right, this is my first series ever of watching Doctor Who. I've never seen it before, but I heard that this new series with Jodie Whittaker was a perfect jumping on point for any newcomer, so I thought, hey, why not, let's give it a go, let's jump on and let's watch this thing. And I found myself to actually really enjoy this series and enjoy this show, and again, as a newcomer, I found so many things to really get attached to and to pick up on as I was watching this week by week, episode by episode. And again, even just speaking as a newcomer, just looking at this as a show, not necessarily as a Doctor Who fan, I really enjoyed it. First off, we're going to talk about Jodie Whittaker. Of course, she is the new Doctor for this series, and this is quite an interesting talking point. Obviously, she is the first female Doctor that we've ever seen. I have to say, I think Jodie did a fantastic job with this series. I think she was really good as the lead. I think she's really positive, she's really fun, she's charismatic, she knows how to lead this team, and I think she does a fantastic job across the board. Now, while I think Jodie and her performance is fantastic, the writing for her character not necessarily up to the same standard. I think that she's incredibly one note. She comes across very much as being the same type of personality no matter what situation she's put in. There's a little bit of fluctuation, in terms of her personality, in certain situations, but for the most part, pretty much 90% of the time, she is always incredibly positive and incredibly fun and light-hearted, no matter what is going on. And that's fine, that's a great character to put into a show like this, but the problem with that is that there's not really much going on beneath the surface. There's not really much happening, and I feel like that's a real disappointment. I was waiting for a moment that just really gave her an edge, or really gave her this emotional moment, but she never really had that in the entire 10 episodes of this series. So, although I think Jodie and her performance was absolutely fantastic, I love her, I think she's great, I just feel like the writers could have done a little bit more to show a bit more humanity to her character. Now we'll move on to the companions. We had Tosin Cole as Ryan. I thought Ryan was a bit of an interesting one. He was incredibly annoying to me at first. I wasn't a huge fan of him when the series first started, but as it went on, he really began to grow on me, especially when you get to around episode 7, Kablam. That was when he really started to get good for me, and I really liked him by the end. I think he was really good, and I think it was intentional. I think he's supposed to start off as kind of annoying and a bit brash, and then he develops and grows with the story and with the series, and I think it played off well. If that was their intention, which I think it is, then I think they did it well. And I think, by the time you get to the end of the series, you're going to like Ryan. If you don't like him at the beginning, just stick with it, and I think you will like him by the end, as I did. And then we have the gorgeous Mandip Gill, who is going to be playing Yaz, and I thought Yaz was probably the weakest of the companions. And again, I think Mandip Gill is really good in this role. I really like her, but she got nothing to do in this series. Absolutely nothing to do. She never had a single episode particularly dedicated to her. There was Demons of the Punjab, episode 6, which was supposed to be about her, but it was more about her family, not necessarily about her. So even though that episode was supposed to be Yaz's episode, it didn't come across that way because it was so much focused away from her. So it was kind of funny in that way. Like I say, I think Mandip Gill is fantastic in this role, and again, I really like her. She just got nothing to do. Like, in every episode, she pretty much just stands around, walks around, follows the Doctor and the other companions, has a line here and there, but doesn't really get anything to do that's specific to her. And again, she doesn't really get her own standalone episode, and I found that really disappointing. I'm hoping next series we really get a lot with Yaz, because she needs that development. There are a couple of moments where she does shine, like in episode 7 when she manages to flip over the villain of that episode, and she does get a couple of tiny little tidbit moments, but nothing substantial like Ryan and Graham get. Now, speaking of Graham, played by Bradley Walsh, he is perfection. He is absolutely brilliant in this entire thing. He is easily the best of the companions. He's just so funny. He is basically playing himself, but he's just so likable. Bradley Walsh is so likable, and he is just so great in this role. Like, just seeing him as just this really funny, often sarcastic, but really real character, he worked for me on every level. I thought he was absolutely fantastic in every single episode. He's a great actor as well, and I just think he was able to pull it off fantastic. And he also had an emotional edge to his character, of course, with the character of Grace, Reese, his wife, who was killed in episode 1, in the first episode. And, you know, from that point on, Graham just went through this amazing story. And even by the end in episode 10, which literally just debuted like half an hour ago, it was really interesting to see how that arc kind of concluded. So I really love Graham. I was really worried they were going to kill him off by the end of the season, but they didn't. And I'm really happy about that, because he's one of my favourite things about this series right now. Now, moving on to the negatives, we also have the fact that there wasn't really any overarching story for this series. Now, again, I don't know if Doctor Who is typically like that. Again, I'm kind of just speaking to this as a show. Doctor Who may not be like that. I don't know. I'm going to go back and watch the other series, Eccleston onwards, because they're all on Netflix, and, you know, I'm really interested in that now, so I do want to go back and watch them. But as it stands right now, as of recording this review, I've not seen any other Doctor Who series apart from Series 11. And I think that, you know, there wasn't really any overarching story, and I found that very distracting. Every episode is incredibly standalone. You could pretty much jump on this season at any point, and it wouldn't matter. You didn't have to go back and watch any of the other episodes of the series, because you can just jump on, and everyone's so standalone. Even the finale is incredibly standalone. There's no build-up. Like, there's nothing building up throughout the entire series that, you know, that builds this crescendo at the end. There's nothing like that. Every episode is just its own separate adventure, with its own separate characters, its own story, and its own villain. There's nothing particularly to build up throughout the entire series, and I found that a bit disappointing and a bit weak from a structure standpoint. And going hand in hand with that is the fact that there is no overarching villain. There is there's a villain who appears in the first episode and then comes back in the last episode. But to me, that's not an overarching villain. He shows up once and then at another end at the end. That doesn't work for me. I feel like if they were going to do that, and the idea of this, you know, this villain, you know, the Stenza, if they wanted to do that, that would have been fine, but you would have had to, like, it's fine doing it in episode 1, fine doing it at the end, but we should have had a couple of little teasers, you know, maybe 3 teasers throughout the rest of the series that you could have done, like maybe in episode 4, and then in episode 7 or 8, you know, just like a little teaser to know that this character is still out there and is still, you know, building to something, and we can, you know, as fans then, we would take that and we would expect this character to show up again, most likely in the finale, and it would have worked and paid off a lot better, because the character just kind of rocks up in the finale and you're like, oh, okay, yeah, that guy from episode 1, and then that kind of ends. So I feel like the idea of having no overarching villain, just like the story, doesn't quite pay off as well as they hoped it did. So as you can see, this series is a bit hit and miss with me. For every positive, there seems to be a negative, whether we're talking about the characters, the story, or the villain. You know, I think there are some good elements to it, there are some really fun elements, and overall, I really had a good time with this series. Again, as a first-time watcher, I loved this series. I had a great time with it. I just do have a lot of negatives that really kind of hold it back, but, you know, just purely talking about this as an enjoyment standpoint, and as a technically non-Doctor Who fan, I really had a good time with it, and I would technically class myself as a Doctor Who fan just based on this series alone. And I'm very excited about Series 12, and I'm also going to go back and I'm going to rewatch, or watch for the first time, everything leading up to this. You know, I'm going to watch pretty much from Series 1. You know, whenever Eccleston's series was. See, I'm very unknowledgeable about this. But yeah, from Eccleston onwards, I'm going to go rewatch that, because I had such a great time with Series 11. So have you guys seen Doctor Who Series 11? Make sure you let me know all your thoughts about it in the comment section down below. Did you like it? Did you hate it? I think this will be an interesting one to discuss, so make sure you let me know your thoughts in the comments. And as always, guys, if you want to see more movie and TV reviews from me, be sure to subscribe, and I hope to see you guys again in my next video.